Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast, and we are looking at the Nuggets headed to San Antonio to take on the Spurs tonight on a small 3-game slate. Make sure you like and subscribe to that page, as we got a couple other videos for those other 2 games up tonight with some player props sprinkled in each and every one of those. And Nate's got his great article up on playpicks.com as well with some best bets and player props in there for you. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's jump into those lines.
Yeah, this is the game that's seen the biggest line movement so far. Spurs are 2-point favorites after opening as 2-point dogs in some spots. I mean, the Nuggets are on a back-to-back here, and they're extremely shorthanded with guys like Jeff Green playing nearly the entire game out of necessity. So it is fair to wonder if they'll have to sit some guys or just rest those veterans a little bit tonight. The total is at 215.5. It's risen about a point or a point or two at this point. And the other 2 games tonight, both of those totals are slowly rising. The Jazz are -3 at the Sixers with a total of 217.5, and the Lakers -3 at the Grizz. That total's risen all the way to 224. We talk about taking the action on the other side of that in our separate episode on that game. Here we're looking over, though, especially if it stays around 215 or 214. Look, we're not going to try to predict necessarily how these teams perform against each other, although the Spurs have had tremendous success at home against Denver. They do have a pretty good defensive matchup against Jokic with Jakob Poeltl. They've won 16 of their last 17 at home against Denver. Obviously have the rest advantage here. Denver's just 1-3 on back-to-backs this season. They're 14-22 straight up when listed as underdogs since 2020. But the over is 23-13 in those spots. So definitely a lot to like, especially with them tired. Their defense is probably going to be even worse. Their defense is the best in the league at home in terms of points per game, 98.7. But on the road, that jumps all the way to 109.4. They've allowed 113 in their last 9. Jokic has been out for 4 of those games, and 8 of the 9 have gone over. Jokic has been packing 5 and is just lighting it up as usual. 26 points per game, 13 rebounds per game, 9 assists per game. Had to go for 39, 11, and 11 on 17 for 23 shooting for them to win in New Orleans last night. So they're going to need everything they can from him, but he's been able to provide it, one way or another, and probably will still be able to keep this offense rolling against a Spurs team that drops considerably in defense at home. They're the 2nd worst defensive rating at home. They have the 6th best offensive rating at home, and 9 of their 11 home games have gone over. We're looking at games averaging 226 at the AT&T Center, with the Spurs allowing 112.6 on average. They're going to be missing a couple of good wing defenders, Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell tonight. So that will help the Nuggets, who are playing a lot of backups on the wing, find some offense. So I think, the starting point here is the over. I'm slightly leaning towards the Spurs just because the Nuggets are so thin behind Jokic, but it's been foolish to bet against the MVP at this point. So I'm not necessarily looking at that unless you want to try to get some extra juice with the Spurs money line and the over, get up over plus 200. I think it's worth the risk in that stance.
Yeah, I would be scared to take the Nuggets because of that back-to-back and how much Jokic has to carry them. But, I mean, that's what he does. I don't know. He seems to be the best in-shape looking sort of doughy big man that we've ever seen because he doesn't get tired. I mean, he played like 3 overtimes, right, in a couple playoffs a couple seasons ago against the Blazers. I mean, he can go, right? And it's the second night of the back-to-back that does make you a little bit nervous considering the amount of injuries that they've had. So I'm not going to bet against the Nuggets either, to your point earlier. here, regardless of how much that spread is moving in people like San Antonio tonight. I do like the over as well, mostly because you look at, starting point for both teams, as we mentioned, at home this year. San Antonio, 9 of 11 games have gone over, 1 pushed, and Denver, 8 of their 13 road games have gone over. As you mentioned, their road defense is so much worse than their home defense. So those are the 2 starting points. You look at Keldon Johnson and Vassell potentially being out. Those guys have actually contributed more on the defensive end, to be honest, especially in the last 10 games or so. Keldon Johnson's points way down to about 12.2. Vassell's under 10 points a game in that same time frame. But you mentioned Doug McDermott coming in. He is more of an offensive player and should actually is averaging more in their last 10 games than both of those players as well. So he's going to have a little bit more of a role, which will lead to more offense, less defense from the way he plays as well. So the entirety of this tells me over. I'm not going to overthink what the Spurs do at home versus what they do on the road, right? It's exactly what happened the game a couple nights ago against the Knicks. It felt like it was leaning towards a little bit of a choppier game. Maybe the Spurs have been showing some recent, defensive prowess, even at home, a couple good defensive games against the Wizards and Celtics in their last 8 that we mentioned. But at the same time, I think they are what they are at home, and that larger sample size of that 113 offensive rating at home, 111 defensive rating at home versus drop those numbers by about 9 points each when they go on the road. It's a much different game. They play at that faster pace. I'm actually going to be looking at DeJounte Murray. I did it again. DeJounte Murray. I'm going to be looking at him again tonight because he has been red hot in his last 10 games, averaging 19 points, 10 boards, and about 9 assists as well in that time frame, in about 35 minutes. So he's doing it all for them. That usage rate still hovering around 23% as well. I think, with the lack of perimeter players that keep falling all over the place for Denver, that's one spot that I might consider tonight is DeJounte's props. He is at about 19 points, which is right hovering around what I would expect him to get tonight. It's why it's there at about even money for him is 19.5 really. But I would also sprinkle some on either McDermott or Derek White. I think we can expect some points in this game. And both of their props are sitting at a pretty nice place. Derek White at 14.5 points and McDermott at 12.5, which I think is even better because that's even money right there on FanDuel for Dougie McD.
Yeah, and McDermott is actually shooting 56% from 3 at home, definitely helping that Spurs offensive rating rise a lot, hitting nearly 3 triples per game. You can get him to get 3 triples or more for plus 170 at FanDuel. And the Nuggets, like everything, do a little bit worse guarding the 3-point line on the road, giving up 35% in those spots. Both these teams have just been consistent on offense. Great coaches, great schemes, and a couple great players to get you shots in Jokic and Murray. Their offensive ratings are both around 114 in their last 5, and they're both 3 and 2 in that span. It's definitely an even matchup with the Spurs playing much better. They've covered in 6 of their last 8. They're now up to 6 and 5 against the spread at home. So it is a true toss-up. The line is set correctly, assuming that the Nuggets don't have to rest anybody on a back-to-back here. But close matchup, hopefully one that features more offense than defense based on the guys that are out. And the way the Nuggets have been playing lately, I don't think that they have any other choice in how they're going to try to win.
Yeah. I'm not going to really touch the spread on this one. I don't love this game. It's a weird Thursday night. Once again, some back-to-back, some weird stuff going on. I would consider that total. But more than anything, I think this is a player props game for me if Joker plays. And then eyeing some Dougie McD stuff as we talked about. So either way, that is all the time we have for today. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page as we've got the other 2 games up for tonight on this small Thursday night slate. And until we see you next, happy betting.